Brookings Institute released a report last year which showed that if we give students an educational voucher, or we give them, their, let's say about approximately $9,000 in their tax dollars to spend that at whichever school that they so desire, that scores and student performance and education in general rises, and there are clear benefits from that. So what would you say to this? Why do you think that giving parents and students the choice to choose their school would actually deteriorate the levels of education?
So I can't say that, and I looked at the report, and I also looked at a few other reports. There's no real proof that these schools are the reason why those scores are going up. And even the only way that these private schools where you get these vouchers for are outperforming in a major way, the only number that they're outperforming in is graduation rates. And in graduation rates, so you can't say that it's not the parent being more involved in that student's life to even decide to go and apply for a voucher. That student's parents is obviously more involved than the average parent. So that could be directly related to why their graduation rates are higher. And I'm not nervous about public schools competing with private schools, because I think that if public schools were given the same type of funding, then they would compete at the same level as any private school, as any charter school. We just need to be able to give the funding. We need to, specifically because right now our public schools are overcrowded. I don't think anyone can deny that. So if we start funding those schools more, the district schools more, we start being able to hire more teachers, which means classroom sizes are smaller, which means we get back to individualized training, which made our education system so great. Now we could say you get individualized training in private schools, which is true, but the state should not be subsidizing private schools. It's a for-profit entity. The state should not be giving the vouchers for these for-profit entities, because all it's doing is saying that we rather give money to people who are trying to make money than to schools who are open to all students. And on top of that, you're not required to go to the high school that is in your district. I got a boundary exception. So I was supposed to go to Dobson High School. I went to Westwood High School. I also went to a charter school. I also went to an alternative school. So I have a unique perspective on this, and I can honestly say that if we gave funding to district schools, they would not only perform at the same level, they would outperform their counterparts in the private sector.
I also had that experience, and it was easy for me to go to a different high school than the one in my district, and that was great because I lived in a pretty good part of town and in a place where the schools aren't overcrowded, and I could easily do that. But the problems arise in the inner cities, and the problems arise where the low-income families do not have that option because the other schools, the other options are already taken up by other students. That's the problem. There is no choice when most of the student base is trying to fight for a better education and can't get it because of government bureaucracy. If we want to talk about truly innovative ideas, something like the education savings account is something that we should be looking at. Basically, it's like a voucher, but what it does is that it provides a savings account for parents to spend money on their students' education. It could either be tuition, books, tutors. This gives a complete control over their kid and over their kid's education, and obviously that comes up with a better result because now we're choosing, instead of a government bureaucrat saying we need these many pencils, we need these many books, now the parent is saying, my kid is good at math, so I'm going to focus on that part. My kid is struggling in science, so I'm going to get him a tutor for that. The flexibility that comes with school choice outperforms the industrial machine of public education where everybody has to be the same, everybody has the same hours with the same teachers. It's time to really come up with innovative ideas and stop funding all of the failing schools. The USA is number one in education funding in the world, and yet we're still not number one in math, science, reading, or whatever, because it doesn't come from money. It comes from actually having the choice and having free market choices in order to make our services better.
Well, then where are all these innovative ideas? Because we've been pushing school choice for since before I graduated in high school, and that was, I don't want to admit to how long ago that was, but I mean over a decade ago. And we're still ranked towards the bottom of the barrel when it comes to our education scores, and that's across the board. Arizona is being outperformed by at least 40 other states.
And it's being slowed down by the people who don't want this competition, who say we don't want public schools to compete, we don't want parents having money in order to spend that publicly funded money for their own child's education. It's being slowed down because we really aren't getting a market solution. We're getting a government bureaucratic solution in the process. Charter schools are not the answer. They're just a step towards the right direction. And a true free market system allows the parent to choose for his kid. That's where we need to go.
So, and before I just wanted to clarify that when we're talking about school choice, we're not necessarily just pitting public schools against private schools, but for the most part, it's pitting public schools against public schools. Students and parents are not going to be taking this money and always sending their kids to private schools. It could just be that they want to send their child to the best public school within their district. So I think, before you were talking about the fact that we don't want to be sending money towards private for-profit, but that money doesn't necessarily always go to private schools. It could just as well most likely go to another public school instead.
If they're getting like ESA accounts, actually for the most part, ESA accounts have been used for students with disabilities. Yeah. So, I'm for that. I don't know about expanding it to just allow it in general. We still have a free market. If you could, I'm not saying that you should only be able to get to a private school if you could afford it, but that tends to be, for the most part, how especially those on the right lean. Like if you can afford it, then you can pay for it. So if I'm interested in education, this is the one difference across the country. This is the one difference that doesn't have the same standards. Which is fine, okay, but at the same time, we need to remember that we are picking and choosing now. And right now, we're not picking district schools because we are continuously trying to expand the school choice program, and we're doing it by cutting resources to district schools.